Welcome back to the third episode of the Brits Don't Jump podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Doyle. Today we've got an excellent guest to help us cover the Super League basketball women. We're going around in 2 week cycles if we can, so every 2 weeks we'll cover Super League basketball, we'll get back to the women's side, and hopefully, now the season's starting, we'll get a weekly podcast, which I'm very much looking forward to. So today on the podcast with us is Rona on comms, or better known as Rona. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I think me being on something called Can't Jump is really appropriate, if I'm honest.
I'm the same. I'm 5'5". I'm going absolutely nowhere with it. So yeah, we'll get. What we'll do is with all our guests, Rona, we'll like to know a basketball journey, and obviously yours is a bit more different with being an actual player. You'll be the first player, or ex-player, we've had on the show. So if you want to just tell us a little bit how you got actually into basketball.
So primary school, I was primary 5, so like that year 4 or 5, and we moved house, and my new school had a basketball team, and I loved all things sport, you name it, I've done it, from figure skating, dance, jiu-jitsu, karate. So anyway, they had a basketball team, I joined it, got put into the local pathway through a flyer, like textbook situation, went to St Mirren, the local club, and progressed. Distinct, there we go.
Was there any other sports, because you listed off a lot there, is there any other that you're actually really good at and you maybe had to make a choice between?
I wasn't really good at it, but I was really passionate about dance, which I think are two very different things. So when it came to having to make a choice about 15, 16, it wasn't a difficult choice to make. Like, I had been representing Scotland, I was going away, like we'd been to Malta, but I was also teaching dance, so I was on the pathway to become a teacher of tap. And actually, since I've retired from basketball, I've gone back to dance because it's something I just really enjoy doing. It's very non-competitive, totally different set of rules really when it comes to fitness. So yeah, I wasn't amazing at it, and I did a bit of everything in the school. I played in the school, like football team, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, dance was where my passion was, but not where my talents lay.
What was it like travelling with Team GB or Scotland at that age group? Did you feel like that was definitely going to be your profession at the time, or was it kind of you just enjoying being in the moment?
Exactly that. The pathway, I just didn't really see a future in basketball as a female at all. Things that even in the past 2-3 years up here, things have expedited with the Gladiators, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Reaching and going and playing for your country was about as high as it got. Even GB wasn't a thing that seemed as much. I remember I got invited to GB under-20s, but it was all done quite last minute. Back then, seen as, I'm going back 18 years, something ridiculous like that, and I'd already booked a holiday to Florida, like, that's not going to work. So anyway, things were very different. People even going to the States wasn't as common, like female pros wasn't a thing, like even the Edinburgh Rocks, they never came through till Glasgow, till I was a bit older, so even seeing the men's pro side wasn't as easy to see. I mean, you could barely even get the NBA. Remember, it was like, when it was my age group, it was kind of like on Channel 5 at goodness knows what time. So to me, it was just like having great fun, being with my pals, but I don't think it's really going to take me anywhere, but I'm having a great time doing it.
Because we mentioned that in the last podcast, actually, because that's one thing I struggle with is like grassroots in this country. Was there a clear pathway, did you find? Like, did you know, like, once you decided basketball was your profession, did you know what pathway you had to take to make the next step? Or were you not really informed on anything like that?
I think, like I say, I was quite textbook and I was very fortunate. So active schools is a thing up here that was being trialled, and I've since found out when I'm older now that it happened to be the PE department. I was at my feeder high school. They were kind of the trialists of it. So that's where they kind of came out and did lessons. Like, so second teachers would come into primary schools to take lessons. And then they were trying to build this sort of school to club pathway in St Mirren, which was headed up by Barry Lang, who's still obviously involved at Basketball Scotland. His dad had a very clear idea of having started really under 12s, then under 14s, 16s, 18s, and eventually had senior women. So I kind of fed into that pathway. You then had to represent Scotland at under 15s. You had like a north, south, east, west tournament. So like the best players from each part of the country, so to speak, came together. That was probably my first experience of being away like that to Grangemouth, with your teammates and competing, all that sort of thing. And then from there, they would pick like development Scotland teams or the Scotland team. So that was I was quite fortunate in nothing where I was based, and it was quite easy to see the pathway there. I had some girls above me, obviously 18s, to aspire to, and then obviously when the seniors came in. So I think I was very fortunate in that way, and it was easy to see like where the Scotland pathway went, because the benefits and the limitations of being such a small country. You know, lots of people know each other and you can see where you're going to go with it. But as a profession or a job or making something out of it, like, you're great at sport, be a PE teacher. Ta-da! Not to fall into that old category, but, you know, that's kinda how it was, whereas nowadays, especially with the comms side, it's I actually wanted to be a journalist when I was at school, but and I remember doing my big critical essay on the lack of women's coverage in sport, in papers sort of thing for sport, and it was like, that's what I was really keen to do, but I was talked out of it between school and even my own parents to an extent. They were like, "Well, how many female sports journalists to see? You know, there's not much sport in the thing. How are you gonna report on it?" That sort of stuff. Whereas it's weird that I seem to have gone full circle and I'm getting to do it as a sort of side hobby, which is awesome. Yeah, feel very fortunate. Interesting what the sport gives to you and what you take out of it and how you end up where you are.
Yeah, well, do you know that's a good point as well? Because I think me and Ollie talked about it on the first podcast. We were saying, is it like, and especially now, was it always a case of people didn't want to watch women's sports, or is it because people just simply wouldn't put it out there? Even now, it's quite difficult to watch, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
unless you go looking for it. Was it a case of people didn't want to watch it? Do you think, or do you think it wasn't accessible? So how could they?
I think it's like anything, isn't it? It's like if you ask people what sport they play, if you look at, or even if you look at just take basketball, like from my age group, a lot of good players came from Portobello High School. They came from Grife. They came from, I'm trying to think of somewhere else off the top of my head, but they came from schools where you had basketball teachers who were coaches. So again, that was a sort of wash. It's like, so would they actually have been basketball players if they weren't exposed to it? So would you watch women's sport if you weren't exposed to it? Well, probably, but if it's so inaccessible, you know, accessibility is a massive issue across a wide range of things. And I think specifically with having access to women's sport, well, you can't watch something that you don't know exists, or you can't watch something that you can't switch on the TV and see. But I think even that makes such a difference. I think you can see that with the crowds that people are getting across a wide range of sports. And the amount of bums on seats effectively that you're getting as well, and the interest behind it. So yeah, the whole you can't be what you can't see. Just like when I was a youngster, I wasn't able to see a pathway as such outside of, you know, making the Scotland team or whatever. But the ones coming through now, there's so many options and pathways.
Yeah, it's definitely getting better, and especially in like England. When I was watching like the Lionesses play in the final, obviously like you're talking about crowds there. I mean, look how many people are going to watch that now. Like that was the highest attended like game ever in the Euros. So when I was watching that, actually, it was Beth. And I don't know if it's because I've got a daughter now, but I never used to be soft, right? I would like obviously I would feel bad for people, but now I was listening to Beth Mead talk about the trouble she went through as a young woman trying to play sports. I think there was one bit where she said, you know, she was just trying to play football when she was younger and she had parents laughing at her. And I genuinely, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to her like a woman, but I welled up. I was like, oh my God, like, how is that even a thing? How are you being laughed at for playing a sport you wanted to play? Like, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Did you find anything like that when you were coming up in sports? Did you ever have, like, maybe anyone saying you shouldn't be doing it or making a joke out of it as in such a way?
Yeah, the standard go back to high school, you know, being 5'10" and a half and a little bit, because nobody wants to be 5'11" if you're a girl, you know, and that's there's a bit of secondary school trauma there when you just want to fit in, you know, and we have
Yeah,
a big thing up here. Anyone from Scotland listening to this will know about Scottish country dancing. And every Christmas you have to line up, and my PE department were hideous. The boys had to line up at one side of the room, the girls had to line up at the other side of the room, and they'd either say it's boys' choice or girls' choice. And then you would just have to walk and ask someone to dance. And I mean, as teenagers and puberty and hormones, like, that's pretty hideous. And also, you know, that whole thing of, oh, you don't want, like, a girl shouldn't be taller than a boy, which, I mean, where does that even come from? Like, come on.
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
So then, as a tall girl, I only then had my very limited choice of boys that you could dance with anyway. But I also didn't really enjoy PE in school, ironically, because I was very good at basketball and the boys weren't very good at basketball, and they'd be like, "Oh, you think you're so cool, Rona the man," like, and it would just be horrible. And as a teenage girl, you're just like, "Oh my God." And then obviously the teachers would have me demonstrate and I'm like, "Please just let the ground swallow me up." And it all came from a good place. Like, I had a very supportive PE department. They would help fund things like to go and do table official courses or to go to camps. Like, they were awesome, but also I would just like to have been quite quiet. I'm actually a big introvert for someone who is quite mouthy and loud. Sometimes I'd quite like to just be quite socially anxious and not do anything. And that was very much when I was at school, because you're all trying to figure each other out. And yeah, the boys weren't overly kind about me getting good at sport or being like that. But I was very fortunate that my mum especially was a massive cheerleader, and I had aunties and various other people who were they were like, that's amazing, that's so cool. But when school is your life at that age, and everyone's talking about what they did at the weekend, and you're like barely can walk up the stairs because you've had 2 6-hour training sessions in Dunfermline, your lives don't really matter. But yeah, I wish I could go back and tell my younger self it's all going to be fine. It is totally worth it, and you won't even be friends with these people in like 3 years. So don't stress. It's as easy as an adult, isn't it? As a teenager, it's very difficult, and that's, I guess, one of these things student athletes find out nowadays, don't they?
Exactly. I mean, hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? When you look back, especially like I think I was talking about someone the other week where like you think about what the things you do now, and back in the day you couldn't even walk down a hallway if you heard someone laugh. You'd think it was about you, wouldn't you? Like it's ridiculous how things change. So
And
that's
it's so
it.
easy that
It's just
no one
I genuinely cannot wrap my head around how it's even a thing. So it's just it's someone wanting to play a sport. Do you know, like if you put it into perspective, why? Like, why is anyone laughing? Why is anyone trying to make a joke out of something you enjoy doing? I just don't
it's their own
understand it.
insecurities, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's their insecurities, and that's exactly what it was with me, and I knew that. But there's no way you can stand up to a class of boys when you're doing the equivalent of like GCSE or A-level PE, because I didn't have that same confidence in that environment. And I guess that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's having the right person in the right environment, and that's what we learn, and that's what I guess schools are trying to do now. But you can't always get it right, and it's not always going to be right. And actually, I learned a lot from that, and that has stood me in good stead as well. But it's just heck of an uncomfortable at the time.
No, but I couldn't even imagine what like women had to go through. I hear some stories. So I was doing like an article for me, the WNBA people that I write for, and I was looking back at some of the stuff they went through. Like even when I'm sure it was at first, I don't know what year it was, but it was like women's basketball, and I think the USA team won it, and they weren't allowed to get a medal. Like they won the basketball and they weren't awarded a medal for it. And I'm just like, that is just the thickest thing I've ever heard. Like, how does that make sense? How are you good enough to go to the Olympics? How are you good enough to play in the Olympics and you're not allowed a medal? Like, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, there's always inequalities. Like I was definitely on trips where a men's team would have funding and we wouldn't. So like they're getting bought their snacks and given money to spend, and we were like buying our own things and sorting ourselves out. Like, and that stings. But again, it doesn't make us any less or any less talented. It's just the money wasn't there at the time. And I like to hope that by putting teams out and being successful, at least hopefully we've trailblazed, and those before us had to do it and probably had to put up with even more adversity
Mm-hmm.
to get to where they were to create something for us. So I guess that's what it's about, isn't it? That you all just want to make it better for the next ones coming through.
Exactly. I think you have definitely done that because, like you say, look at the grassroots now, the way people, like the pathways that are there for young girls to get through, it must be night and day from what you've had.
Mm.
So moving on, you mentioned about when you wanted to do your writing from your mum, when you wanted to do the reporting on women's sports, and like she said, but will people take interest in that? How did you find the transition actually moving into commentary then and moving into the media towards women's basketball?
Pretty straightforward, really, because they don't talk back on comms, do they? It's kind of like you just put it out there and hope it works. But again, a bit like I touched on earlier, like massive insecurities, because I don't really like all the commentators I listen to and have listened to, and it's amazing how much more I hear commentary, or I go and watch specific games because I want to hear certain commentators that I really like. But yeah, I was just like, everyone's going to mute this. Then I thought, you know what? If everyone mutes it, everybody mutes it. Like, we all have to start somewhere, and it is something I have a genuine interest and passion for. And I'm also like, I'm being handed this opportunity that how many other people would love to have it, or, so I've got to grab it with both hands and run with it. And that's kind of what I've just tried to do. I've made plenty of mistakes, but I think I've achieved a lot as well. And there's lots I'm proud of. And I guess the thing is, I'm so passionate about the women's game, and it's just, they play so many fewer games. So like, I was excited because I got to 50 games, but I was like, wow, if I was like a full time, like doing all the men's games, I'd be at 50 games so much quicker, probably in about half the time, quarter of the time. But again, I want to promote that women's game as much as possible, as much as I want to promote the men's game as well. But I really want to give them the thing that I again didn't have, and big up all these players, whether they're beating my non-biased towards Gladiators team or whether they're not, So I just think it's an amazing opportunity. And again, this might be as far as I go with it, but then hopefully some other girl sees it and goes, oh, actually, or even another boy and be like, okay, she's Scottish, she's had maybe even less of a basketball career than they'll go on to have, but it's something they can then see themselves going and doing. So I guess it's all about visibility and being there.
How long did it take you to get used to it then? Because obviously, like, I imagine first time going into it, it's like anything, you're nervous, you're worried you're going to say the wrong thing, you're worried if what you're going to say makes sense. How long did it kind of, I wouldn't say Stockholm syndrome, but maybe it was, where you kind of don't know if you should be doing it? How long did it take to shake that and actually be comfortable where you go, do you know what it is? I belong here and I should be doing it?
Come back to me in like 2 to 3 seasons, and I might be able to be like, well, it was about the January of 2026. But I
Still, is
think,
it still like a thing, is it?
yeah, I still have imposter syndrome, but I think a lot of that comes from I've always achieved well and been quite a high achiever. So, and I think one of my biggest strengths is my biggest flaws, and so far is nothing's ever good enough, and I want to be better at things. And even if I was to put up when I was playing like a 30-20-10 performance or something, not that I ever did, but I just throw it out there.
Just
I'm like, yeah, I did actually several occasions. It's like, or I've been like MVP, but I'm like, but I still missed. Like I was only shooting 50% from the floor, or I had that person, they beat me on a one-on-one situation, So I guess it's the same with the comms. I'm like, every season I feel like I'm getting better. Like I do think I'm getting better and I'm trying to learn and grow. And I'm starting to feel more, to be honest, I do feel more like I belong and I've got a bit more savvy about me and learning on the spot. But yeah, I think it's not a bad thing to always feel like, okay, I can do more, I can do better. And I guess I thrive on that sort of situation. So yeah.
I think, to be honest though, and I'm not just saying this, but like if I listen to the commentary, Ollie was the first one. He said he'd been doing it for a year. Yourself, I put on them games and the commentary's good. Like it's really good. I enjoy it. It seems like it's natural. It flows. And like you see, you probably never shake that. Like I just called imposter syndrome, Stockholm syndrome a second ago. So like you make mistakes. You know what I mean? It's just. I hope that's not what I'm
doing. Let me out there, Bina. They do let me go home.
It's just, again, it's like, it's how much you care. Like, it's never been something that bothers me, like, make mistakes and stuff. So, I mean, obviously, on commentary, you've got a wider audience and you've got people listening. So, I suppose it takes you time to get used to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I've heard other commentators make mistakes, like, at some of the biggest games in American commentary and all these things. And I'm like, but I couldn't name you one of those mistakes now, but I could still tell you who I really enjoy listening to.
Exactly. I mean, it's
nobody's
human
going to be
nature.
flawless.
I don't think humans would be any good if they were making mistakes. How are you actually going to learn? Like, how is it possible to learn anything if you're not going to make a mistake?
And that's exactly what I teach, like, the kids in school. I'm like, you're going to learn by failing. I didn't score every layup. I didn't do everything right that I should have playing-wise. Like, the players who I'm going to be commentating on aren't going to get everything right, but I guess it's finding my groove, my style, and trying to just put that across and have my own sort of identity with it as well.
And not exactly right. We'll move on to the Gladiators now. We'll talk about them because you said you're not biased at all. So we'll hear what you've got to say about it.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find in my head.
So last year, obviously, I thought you had a really good campaign. I watched you. It was I always said this the whole year. It was kind of Manchester and Gladiators were two of the teams that really interested us because they weren't running away with the league and they still had things they were trying to work out. For you, what was the expectation going into this season, and do you think you exceeded that expectation?
I think with the Gladiators, their expectations are always high. Obviously, I'm not involved the coaching side or the playing side with the professionals, but I know that they expect and demand a lot of the players. And with the facilities and everything they're providing them, and you've got a fantastic head coach in Chantel, but that was obviously her pretty much first full season at the helm, and that'll be recruiting and all that sort of thing. And then with the assistant coach, Donnie McDonald, backing her up, I think they'll have been disappointed with their 4th place finish. I think they'll have expected to be challenging far higher up. They came away with it in the end because that was a very tight head-to-head between them and Manchester. I think it was quite an up-and-down season for them, but I think that's how it's going to be. But Rome, I keep saying this, but Rome isn't built overnight, so it's like, or wasn't built in a day. So it's like, I think just because there's the cash injection up here and all those sorts of things, expectations are to win, and they did. They came away with silverware, so it is a successful season. But I think there would still be a disappointment at finishing 4th and looking at who they did lose to and how they lost, like the manner they lost. I think nobody minds. Everybody's going to lose to the better team on the day. but nobody wants to lose just because you're not at the races, or things that you could maybe have controlled a little better, or, is it injuries, is there recoveries? Hannah Robb was out for such a stint. So there's been a lot of things that went on there.
Yeah, so like going into that the quarter final in Manchester, did you think you were the better team going into that? Obviously, they had Danny Williams, who was just a fantastic player, MVP of the league. Did you think that was a game going into it like you were favourites, you should be able to win this, or do you think it was just so evenly matched it was going to be one of them on the day?
Yeah, I exactly the latter of those. It was going to be who turned up and who managed to produce in that moment is what I thought it was going to come down to. Yeah, they did. And I think also how it had gone previously in this season. And I think it's also teams are built very differently, aren't they? And you see that in the men's league, and maybe we'll see even more this season with who's going into Europe and who isn't. So it's like, well, you have to and that's kind of been Gladiators thing as well with the women's side. They're having to build a team to compete in Europe and to compete in the SLBW. So, they've gone with the European point guard. Not many other clubs on the women's side go with that European style point guard. They tend to go with an American guard, slightly different. And just how you have to build your team and how robust your team has to be. Because then, the team was on the road for about 3 months, going and playing their European games and coming back. And, you're looking at recovery and how many of the players in the squad had done that before, in that sort of load. If they're overseas for the first time, bringing in rookies. So I think there's a lot of things going on there. And I think that's where Manchester and Gladiators at times matched each other well, and they had interesting matchups across the floor.
Yeah, so seeing that, like you're talking about, like they're bringing in so many different players and like the American guards. How important do you think it is to the Gladiators keeping Hannah Robb, keeping Robin Lewis, keeping Dominga? How important do you think that's going to be for your upcoming campaign?
I think like any team, you want to keep a core group, don't you? Especially if they've had success. And I think Mathilde, fantastic point guard, and the way she moves and the way she's able to control things, and she did. She came up big for them at times, and also she just kind of was getting it done because she was fifth in points per game for the team. She was first in assists for the team. She was second in steals for the team. To be bringing that back, so you've got a point guard who already knows sort of the plays they're going to run, the systems, they can help control things, which they need to. They need to have such a high IQ to be at that place. And I think also, bringing back Ella Doherty, who was with Pride, has been out to the States. She's well known to, like, got Dolly McDonald, she's played by Hannah Robb, she's known with those players as well, so that's not as much of an unknown. Because I guess anyone can send a highlight reel, but it's like you want to recruit good people, and I know that's another thing the Gladiators are keen on. Chantel bringing in good people, because you can coach good people, but you can't necessarily coach people who don't want to be coached or aren't great teammates, even if they're putting up phenomenal stats. And I think you sometimes see that. You see a lot of in the Twitter or the X sphere, especially in the men's side, where it's like, I wonder why he's not being brought back or why he's being kicked out, because they're posting good stats. And you're like, well, we only see what's put on the court on the
Yeah,
Friday weekend. We don't see the player who's dragging their ass at training, or has got a niggle all the time, or is maybe constantly just tetchy with teammates. So I guess there's so many more things that go on. But naturally, as fans, as comms, we are kind of just seeing the end product of that. We don't see the blood, sweat, and literally tears probably that's gone to that game week.
yeah. I think that's why I'm quite. I don't know yet because you haven't seen any of the rosters. But when I look at who teams have lost, like Newcastle have lost a lot of their star players already. Sheffield's managed to keep a few. I'm looking at Oakland's; they've lost Sam Ashby already, which is obviously massive for them. It makes us think what the Gladiators are doing, kind of like keeping that core of them players together. And it's not like they're keeping random players together, like you see, like the good players, the good people. Does it feel like they can excel a bit then?
I'd say so. I think anyone can excel, and I think someone like Robin Lewis, such an underrated player. Like what she's done at every team she's been in, and just a workhorse and great ethic and all round good person. There's a reason that she's there, and I hope she goes on to play for another few seasons. Because she's probably like the fittest person I've ever met. Oh no, I did play against a gladiator when I was like under 18 senior. Never running into her ever again.
Is that you trying to say you weren't the fittest player on the court? Is that what you're trying to admit there?
I don't think any of my coaches or teammates would ever be like, yeah, she was that one who could jump really high and run really fast
I
and
don't
was
believe
dead
you.
responsible. I've always said I rely on my brain. I know, like a bit like dance. I know when to pick my moment to shine. Or I'm really good at stuff in my stat sheet by like missing shots and then just getting on O boards. So then I'm like, oh, double, stop it. You get you got 42 shots, Rona, and made 10.
Doesn't matter, it's the double that counts.
That was my trade secret. So I'm like, this is why I could never be a coach, because I was like, what do you mean you put the ball in the basket first time? Like, that's so unheard of. Why would you do that? But no, I think keeping the core players and the Scottish thing and that, because we're all very proud of where we're from. And when you can tap into that with players and also the relationships, like I've mentioned, you've already got the coaching staff who know of the players, and I'm really intrigued to see who they're bringing in. Everyone always thinks I know the insides gossip, but I don't, and I quite like not knowing because I like
Yeah.
the excitement, and then I feel like I can't blab. So I'm really comfortable. It's like I feel like if I'd known who they were recruiting and I was coming on this podcast, I'd be like, yes, no, maybe.
I'm not going to lie to you, I've got a load of questions here, and one of them near the end was asking for some gossip, but clearly it's not coming my direction, is it?
Well, it's not coming my direction, so.
No, we'll get back to the playoffs from last year. I was watching the Gladiators in the Oakland's game, and I've spoken to Ollie about this as well. As a commentator, and especially with you, you're doing such a good job at it. I don't know if did you listen on YouTube, maybe, to the Oakland's Gladiators game? Or were you there watching it? So what did you think of the no commentary for a playoff semi-final? I get it can be down to resources. I get it can be down to money. But how frustrating is that when it's been such a good year in the league, you've got such a good set of commentators there? How much does it frustrate you that we couldn't just put on a couple of commentators to give something to make it feel like a playoff experience?
I think it's disappointing, and I personally feel disappointed for the Oakland's players, because they put in a shift, they did really well, they got silverware, and it was going to be a great game. I think the game still has ways to grow in the country, obviously. I know Oaklands are doing good things. They've come on a long way 'cause they've always been so good at establishing their pathway and having those players. Last year, they were absolutely stacked, almost in a way. I think one of the toughest problems at times there was rotations, like who'd you play, who'd you pull, when do you rest, when do you let them shine. I mean, I found it frustrating, but at the end of the day, I'm like, is commentary the most important thing to have there? Because no, I mean, we had Emily Clark on the other podcast, that other She Shall Not Be Named podcast, her basketball round the other way.
Plug it.
Yeah, the Basketball Hard podcast, and that was one of the questions we posed about standards. And I know there has been standards and teams have got to adhere to them, but I imagine there's a fine line between, right, here's the standards, you must meet them, okay, maybe so many teams can't make it, so what of a league would you have? I mean, we've obviously seen we've lost a team already this year from the league, and you don't want to see that, but also you want to see a high standard. So I think there's so many spinning plates, but I was personally disappointed because there are so many great commentators down around there that I really enjoy listening to. But then that's me being selfish, isn't it? Because actually what was important was what was being played on the floor. But I know I wasn't alone in my frustration, but yeah.
I've got to admit, I think I see what you say about it matters what's on the court. It was a brilliant game to the point where I thought Caledonia were going to nick it. But I think it's just if you're looking to grow something and you want if the quality's there on the court, and it was, there's no doubt about it, then why would you not want to enhance it? It's at the end of the day, it's an entertainment business. That's what it is. So you would want, especially with the commentators out there that they've got, you would just kind of hope that maybe someone would step up and actually take part. Or what do you think it's actually down to? Do you think it's down to because of where Oakland's is, obviously it being a gym, or is it just down to resources and money? Is that what it is down to at the end of the day?
So I'm just the face. I just turn up and talk. I have no idea about the tech side. I go in there and I'm like, Stuart, who does our stream scene stuff, I'm like, Stuart, there's a new panel. And he's like, do not touch anything. But we've now got sound effects, but so I don't grasp. So for all I know, it could be to do with walls in there, and there's no Wi-Fi signal. I know sometimes I know it because I know from when I did the stuff with the BBC, they said how good Gladiators was because you can kind of plug and play. So
right.
When we were commentating, here's trade secret, when we were commentating for the BBC, myself and Paul Mitchell, another fantastic Scottish commentator, we were in the actual BBC broadcasting house in Glasgow, and the game was going on in East Kilbride, which they're about 25 minutes apart. So that was interesting. So we were watching the game on a slight lag, obviously. Whereas Kieran Achara, the presenter who was hosting, they were at the arena. So I know Gladiators is well set up for stuff like that, and that'll have been done intentionally, but I don't know, they're playing out of a college gym, so that's going to be slightly different because I know some places as well, if the Wi-Fi signal and stuff's not good. I know also there's been times, not with the Gladiators, but some Scottish things I've offered to be like, oh, I'd happily come along and commentate, obviously as a volunteer for free, and I've been knocked back. and things have gone out without comms. So I don't know why these other decisions are made, and there's various things go on, but no idea. This is why I'm a commentator, 'cause I just talk nonsense.
I mean,
To
I'm
answer
no
your
good.
question succinctly, no idea why it didn't happen, but you would hope it's maybe on their list. But I guess it's like going into anywhere, isn't it? If you look at a list of things to do, commentary maybe sits very low on a priority, whereas winning silverware, team cohesiveness, all that probably sits higher. Again, backroom staff, it's not like these teams have, when you watch, we were talking about the NFL earlier, like when you watch drafts, like that isn't how it's going on over here. There's probably one person sitting with a phone and maybe a laptop to FaceTime people to recruit. So I think workloads and different things, from talking to Lee at Durham last season, these people have a lot going on. So I guess maybe that's something where they're like, cool, that's another hurdle, but we'll cross that at X date.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you mentioned Durham, 'cause that's what I want to bring up here. And Durham, because obviously with me being in Washington, I actually went to Durham University, so I know whereabouts like they play and everything. So that really disappointed me when I seen them drop out of the league. How disappointing is it for you to see us lose another team from the league? And do you think it doesn't lose the competitive edge, but do you think it doesn't help it, as it seems like there's going to be less and less jeopardy in the league fighting for playoffs? How disappointing is it for you for Durham not to be there?
I'm disappointed. I think what Lee does there and the blood, sweat, tears he puts into it is awesome. And you've got players there, Harry Oswald Soulsby, and who are invested, but then she's also got her job there. So sometimes she was in, sometimes she was out. But I mean, that Durham team, they had 5 players, one of the games, and they won. They are invested in doing it, but I guess again there'll have been big conversations, I'm sure, in that situation, because that's not something he'll have given up lightly. So I'm disappointed for him and for his team, and I hope that, yeah, they're able to bounce back and come from it, because they did well. They placed 7th. It's not like they were the bottom team in the league. They've not been winning for seasons. But again, something I talked about with some friends last year was, the women's team was bigger than the men's, or the women's league was bigger than the men's, but there was no more games. Like the women's side played so many less games than the men, and I mean, it would be hesitant of me to say, and it's not like the men's league struggled, because, well, that would be a whole other kettle of fish. But do you know what I mean? In terms of having fewer teams, so maybe the women losing a team, but it wasn't like Durham were, like I say, bottom of the level. It's not necessarily going to lift all standards at all.
Yeah, do you think that's going to be? Do you think it's just a one-off with Durham, or do you think it could happen with a couple of different teams in the future?
Wait till I consult my crystal ball.
Like, because it's something I didn't really get, because I didn't know if it was down to finance from the university, or is it
I would
because
imagine so. I'd imagine it comes to funding, doesn't it? And I don't really know what went on at Leicester, but they lost some players last season, and the team kind of pivoted. And obviously, Coach Ben Stanley, he's away. So I think I guess like anything, when it's a partnership or you're tied into something, you don't have as much say as you do if you're more standalone. But then I guess you don't have the same security if you're standalone. You maybe don't have that same like uni network to tap into or options. So it's tricky, but I would like to hope we don't lose any others. I would love to see that everyone thrives, and Durham come back bigger, badder, better.
I mean, like I say, it was gutted for them, because if it's one team I'm not watching Newcastle, I've always got the stream on for Durham, because it was a team I really, really enjoyed. And like you said, it's not like they had a terrible season. Like they seemed to finish really well, and it was a team I was looking forward to seeing this year. So it was a bit of a shock for me when they dropped out of the league. But yeah, hopefully they'll come back next year, like you say. So we're going to talk about Oakland's a little bit as a one-off, because I know you're so desperate to move away from the Gladiators. How big do you think it is for Oakland's to lose Sam Ashby this year? And do you think that's going to derail the whole team? Or do you think that they're going to just bring in someone that can kind of plug and play a bit there and help them progress a little bit? Or do you think that's a bit of a catastrophe for them?
Catastrophe. Great TV program, by the way.
I can't say I've seen it.
No, it's so good. It's so good. One of my favourite scenes, but I will not divulge it though. But Sam Ashby, I think so. I think when she came across to Oakland, you had Shanice Beck for Norton, and to me that's like your flag bearer. That is, your captain had come from London Lions, Euro Cup winning London Lions. So I think more so Sam Ashby was coming in more like a backup, but did really well and really excelled and came on. I think it's a shame for the league. I also think about the teams lose players. I think of the league losing those players as well. Like we talked about Danny Williams, that sort of thing, and because you really enjoy watching these performances. You enjoy seeing what they do. Like Sam Ashby, the way she came on, what she's been then going on to do with GB. But I think actually where she's going, you like to hope that she'll continue to develop. So actually then that will help GB. So then it will feed itself through. But also I think you have to look at where the league is and whatever, and what players' aspirations are, depends on their age, their position, like what clubs are offering, where they want to go. Because you're like, okay, is staying in the SLBW going to be the thing that gets me into another Euro Cup team? Maybe some players have EuroLeague aspirations, so they're going to have to go away to grow. And the thing is, I guess it's having them come back. So many players, there's always an exodus over to America, to play, and some of it really pans out. But really interested in the Basketball Hour podcast, talking to them, and for a lot of players, they're like, it's tough, like it's hard. It's not, a walk in a park and just go and play some basketball. So I think I'm disappointed to see her go, but I'm excited to see what she does. A bit like Temi playing at WNBA level, it's like I just support whatever team she goes and plays for because I'm like, that's awesome. And I just love to see what she's doing and thriving. Like I don't have a particular allegiance to a WNBA team, but I have allegiances to players. I would say more so.
I've got to say it right, because I'm glad you brought Temi up, because she's actually one of me, obviously naturally, because she's a Team GB player. I was saying this to Ollie in the first podcast. It's so nice that she seems to have found a team where she's valued. I love the Golden State Valkyries, because obviously they're the new franchise in the WNBA. It feels fresh to get big crowds. I don't know if you've seen online, you probably haven't. So they had like a mascot at the start of the season. It was just an egg, and the egg is now hatched, so they've now got a mascot as well. So I'm loving that, but Temi over there seems to be doing fantastic. I would love to see her come back to the league, but I just don't see a scenario where she ever comes back unless the London Lions somehow pump money into that team and want to make them big. So I don't know what you think about
it. Like a farewell
tour.
I was like, maybe she'll come back for a farewell tour. Like when she's winding down or something. Like maybe we can get the Gladiators to recruit her in through Chantel.
She's going to enter the Gladiators, is she? I'll come watch that. Like, you might have a new fan if you manage to get her in.
Well, we've got Toto, so I'm like, oh come on, like let's just make it 2.
Why not?
2 figures.
Talking about London as well, and I wasn't going to actually bring them up, but it's something that gets us as well. When you see how good they were and how good London Lions are, they've now got a rebrand in the men's team. They're pushing for the Euro Cup. How much of a shame do you think it is that they were languishing at the bottom of the Super League basketball women? How much does that bother you, or do you just think it's kind of something that pays the price when they're pumping so many finances into the man's team?
I think it's like that. The finances, I don't understand, and I wouldn't pretend to understand everything that's gone on at Lions and the nuances with the 777 and the leagues, and it's been what it is. I think Kyra Nelson, obviously coming in, I think someone I really enjoy listening to commentate, really knows her stuff. I'm excited for another British female to have that chance to coach, and they're bringing out their academy again, and it looks like it's maybe a start from the bottom, build yourself up, but hopefully, London always did have that pathway with Barking Abbey and things, but this, maybe they've pivoted it a little bit again, so hopefully it's sustainable and it's built right this time, and then if things were to happen, they're still able to support themselves, and it wouldn't be the same of like the rug being pulled from under their feet. But I know, because you go back and forward, you're like, well, is it better to have had a London or have a British team winning the Euro Cup, or to never have had that at all? Like I went down, I remember me and my husband and my wee one, she was 10 months at the time, and we went, because I was like, when are we ever going to get the chance to ever go? It was phenomenal, but we were so British. I don't know if you were there, but so British about it, because their fans were like standing in the aisle, and people were like, they're standing, because we were all like sitting in our seats as we are told to by the, what they call, not rock steady security, but you know what I'm talking about. It's so like, and I was like, what an amazing event, and how busy the Copper bought, and it was just the most elating feeling when they won. And I'm like, yeah, it's one of those events. I still remember where I was sitting and how I could see the court, and we were behind the bench, and I'm like, what an amazing thing to have happened. Yes, what went on afterwards was a car crash. Yeah, it was an awesome moment in time, but I do hope that it's now getting the support and underpinning. I think it looks like there's right people in right places, so long may it continue.
I hope so, because it makes sense as well for your capital city in England to have like a really good team, not to be at the bottom and not even contesting. Like I'm not going to say it was embarrassing for them last year, because that's harsh, but it wasn't It wasn't good, was it? Like, it's
I think
not what you want to see.
the players that they had did a good job.
Exactly.
They were just very young and whatever. And I'm like, actually, it'd be interesting to know what their standards and expectations were for the season. You know, did they sit down as a team at the beginning and be like, okay, because we can't all win all the time. And I think that was something I was always very keen to be like, they're not the Euro Cup winning team, so don't be like, yes, we beat the London Lions. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, or when a team beat them, it shouldn't be like headline news they lost by 40 because you've not got 4 or 5 WNBA players in that team. You know, there's a reason they were steamrolling teams previously. And I think the players did well. And I think what they did, and they had some coaching changes and various things go on. So I think they acquitted themselves well for who they were, their resources, and what they had at their disposal. And that's all you can do. They've all been there. You know, Auckland's Wolves when they were their development team. Other teams have struggled at times.
I mean, if they can retain some of them players, and I know they've started to, like you say, the young players, if they developed what it's like to lose, they know what they're doing wrong. It's not going to be a bad thing if they recruit players, but obviously last year it would have been a bit brutal for them. Do you know, but hopefully they can kick on because I do want to see a more competitive league. So we're going to put you on the spot for the last one, Rona. I normally try and draw up something a bit more fun, but for this one, it's just going to be a simple one. So you can pick any player who was in the SLBW last year. And I'm not saying you've got to kick anyone off the Caledonia Gladiators roster, so we're not trying to insult anybody. But if there's one player in the league, and it doesn't have to be the best player, it's who fits that roster perfectly, who would you have picked?
This is why I'm not a coach or a GM.
But I love to put people on the spot, so this is fun.
Who would... Oh, the thing is, you do realise I've got a brain like a fish. So what happened like at the beginning of this podcast is never mind who was there last season. I did really like Danny Williams as a player. Thought she carried herself well, liked what she did and how she would just get it done. It's interesting when you watch commentary because I tend to notice things like if players are actually getting back in defence or like what are their faces actually saying and the body language, that sort of thing. But it's interesting as well because you see players move around teams and then they don't look like the same player as they did in the previous team. I'm trying to think. I do like Hodges as a player. I thought she was someone who really gets it done, and she was always a thorn in the side for the Gladiators. It'd be interesting to see how she'd have been because she was more that posty style player for the Eagles, whereas Gladiators did have more of that posty presence. So how would she then fit in with that rotation?
Yeah.
So she would have been another one that I like. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Someone else I really liked was Gandini. We had her on the podcast and just seems really nice player. Seems like a hard worker. You know, she just wants to get whatever needs done.
Yeah, no, you know what it is? I just had to do it. I had to stitch it up and see what happened there. There's nothing worse when someone asks you that question, but I think for me, it will be Danny Williams as well. We forgot to mention her on the first podcast. I was like, how she played such a good season. Like you say, it's like she can do a bit of everything, can't she? Like if that's what a team needs, she can do it. So, no, I think you've chose well there.
They needed that. So I'm like, so in a team maybe where you've got a few more things going on, what would her role then look like? You know what I mean? It's always an interesting dynamic that you're like, that's what I mean about bringing in good people because how they fitted in their system when you watch their highlights or you've watched their game tape will be totally different to when you bring them most of the time to a different country to start with. Never mind different coach, different system, different teams. So, yeah.
No, I think you made a good shout there, to be fair. So before we go, you mentioned them before. Do you want to plug your podcast at all? Or expecting it back soon? Or
Watch this space.
Watch this space.
Can't wait to spin another plate. No, it's great. It's Mark who drives it. He's so good. Like he is the one that slogs it out. He edits things again. I just turn up and talk. So props to him for doing it. And again, like yourself, has such a passion for the women's game and growing it. And he's been doing that. You know, he did it when it was a WBL review, and he has just been doing that tirelessly. So props to him. But and yeah, I appreciate when he asked me along last season. It was good fun.
No, if anyone is listening, if you've got chance, firstly, like, share, subscribe this, listen to all the episodes, and then get yourself over to basketball here. Prioritise this one first, and then we'll move over. No, but if you do want to know, especially it was more on a weekly basis, more about the Super League basketball women, and probably more of an expert than I am, definitely get yourself over there because Mark and Rona do such a good job, and it's a great listen. So thank you very much for that.
Not a bad listen yourself. Not a bad listen yourself. You're not a bad listen yourself.
Well, People can't understand us, but I like to talk, so it helps.
I know, put on your accent and my accent, people will be like, no, thank you.
This whole podcast has been gibberish, so they'll not know what's going on.
Title it, it's fine.
Right, well, thank you everyone for listening. Like I say, rate it 5-star on Spotify, give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and we'll be back as soon as we can with another episode. Thank you all for listening.